Hey friends, it's Abigail of VC. Welcome back to Judgment Free Zone. We need vulnerability and empathy now more than ever. I hope you are able to find room for more curiosity, self-compassion, and empathy for yourself and others while you're here. I show up so you can too. All right, guys. We got Rebecca back on. She was the first one that came on with me on my, well, how do I say that? She came on with me for my first ever podcast recording release, right?
Yes.
Is that how you say it?
That's what
Yes.
it was. Yeah.
And so we're friends now. And we're just going to have her keep coming back on because this is not only something that we want to talk about and that we think is important. Obviously, this is Rebecca's job. But you guys really showed that this is what you guys want to be talking about too. This is my most played podcast so far. And I know it was my release, but I know that there's more to it too. I know that I've had so many people reach out to me saying how much this is what they want to talk about and what we need to be talking about. And so we're just going to talk about it openly, some things, all the things, and just be here.
Yeah, I love it. And I tell you what, this is a great week too, because I know up north it may be a few more weeks, but for here today in Martin County is the first day of school. So this is a great time. I feel like whether kids are going back this week or next week or the following week, this is what we're thinking about as parents. Like this is definitely at the very top of our minds right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, my kids started last week.
Yes.
So, and there has been, the girl that one of my daughters was being bullied by last year is in her class. So I just want, you know what I mean? Me too,
Yes.
in so much communication with the teacher, trying to teach Zyla boundaries. Oh, I said her name. I'm trying really hard to
I know.
keep
It's
my
hard.
kids to know, you know what I mean? Because they're gonna listen back someday and hear all this. And I don't want them to think I'm calling them out, but all in love.
No, this is mommy love kind of conversation. This is because we adore them with all our hearts.
I know it is. It is.
Yeah, and I think that that's such a good point because it's just it unearths those fears, and those are not fears that we want to neglect. Those are fears that we want to address right off the bat with our new teachers, with those new parent groups and all the things that we're sort of entering as our child is entering school. When we know already, you already know your child is up against something that they faced in the past, and you as a mom are being proactive and trying to be on top of it and trying to make sure that you can thwart any repeat activity that you don't want and hopefully steer it in a new and positive direction this year, because that's also possible for our kids to actually come around and have good relationships where there weren't necessarily before, because kids are growing every year and they're changing. So there's possibility for something great too that could come.
Yeah, I think the more that we can, learn our own tools and teach them when we're setting those boundaries and putting it into place with other kids, it gives them the opportunity to connect as well.
Yes.
And so that's so important. And of course, that's the end goal, is for all of us at the end of the day, we all want connection. The being bullied and the bullier, we just are trying to get connection and crave connection. But our kids are so egocentric, it's all about self. And so it can be so difficult for us to understand that when we're doing these things, how it's affecting somebody else, and being able to be in that place again of not looking at the kid who is bullying and be like, you're the problem, or you're doing this and this and this, and being able to show up and give them the tools, because both of them are going to learn core values about themselves in this.
Yes, it's so true. And I know we have so many other things to talk about, but you're bringing up such a great topic right off the bat here. And we just did an interview with, he was an 11th grader last year, so he just would have started his 12th grade year today. He was a friend of my middle son. And he came in and he did a wonderful interview for us we just had a big premiere gala of the film. And
I saw. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. It was such a fantastic event, but I have to tell you the best part of the event was two student stories that we showed at that event. One was from a beautiful girl named Sophia. Beautiful, beautiful story in and of itself. This one was from this wonderful boy named Brandon. And he mentioned in the interview, I don't even know if it showed up in the piece that we showed at the gala, but he spoke to me about a story And he said there was this one boy in school, I think he was in ninth grade, that he just was never getting along with. And every time they would be together, it was just combative. I don't think he would define it necessarily as the kid was bullying him, but there was never anything positive between them. And they had this one class together consistently, always got put next to each other. Like it just kept being combative. And one day they were sitting in class, and sure enough, like they'd started a conversation. It was not going well. And he kind of turned around and he sat in his seat and he thought to himself, you know, I'm kind of at a point where I'm like, I don't know what to do with this kid. I don't know how to respond. But he said, what I'm doing and what I've been doing is obviously not working. So let me try something different. And he turned around to the other child and he said, it's my birthday party next week. Would you want to come? And he goes, I just introduced something positive. Now, this is like a ninth grade boy that thought of this.
Yeah,
And
I was just going to ask, how old is he?
Kid, an exceptional kid. Like this kid blows me away every time I meet him. But I thought, what an incredible thought you had. And he goes, and the kid looked at him and went, yeah, I'll come to your party. And he comes to his party. They make such a great connection inside a positive atmosphere with all the people that he did get along with. So now this kid came into an atmosphere where with people he was not combative with, but people he had relationship with. It became so healthy. This kid became his best friend. The kid ends up working for his father all throughout high school. And literally, he said, almost for 1 month, this child even lived at my house, and my parents helped take care of him. And there was obviously things going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But because he opened his heart to this child, it turned around to not just be a great thing for this other boy, but Brandon himself gained a best friend out of it. Like,
That's
who
amazing.
knew that it was about changing and shifting the conversation? So I think there's so much to be said as we're teaching our kids tools about Speaking Life, which is the platform we stand on, that life-giving words and changing something that may be sitting in a very negative atmosphere, when we create our proper boundaries and we're making sure that we're putting those tools in place. But also when we just choose at times to maybe say, okay, we're at a very low place here in our relationship. Like, it's only been negative and combative. What if I come in at a totally different level with a totally different energy, with a totally different voice, and we change it and we change the conversation? What could happen?
Yeah.
Like, let's even to just teach our children curiosity, the what if. Maybe it's been over here and maybe this has been terrible, but what if we changed the conversation and at least tried? It may not work, it may not always work, but it could. And it could really change things.
Absolutely. And that's what, again, what we're doing and what Speak Life the musical is doing and what you're continuing to do as schools is give people those tools and resources and knowledge, because, there have been plenty of things in my life that I wouldn't be where I was today unless I was able to get some kind of tools and resources and knowledge. And you're providing that because, again, as we do know, there are kids who are going through things that are not being taught that in school, whether they are being the bully or bullied. Again, we're not getting those. So once we're able to give them those tools, it can change everything. When we're able to change our mindset, it changes everything. And when we're so much when these kids are about themselves and they're going in and they're being bullied, they're not going, what's wrong with him? They're saying, what's wrong with me?
That's right.
And that's when those core beliefs get completely stained on our hearts and they stay with us forever. It's the I'm not enough, or the trust piece, I can't trust anybody, or the powerlessness of there's nothing I can do. And that's what we want to change. We want to give not only the kids, the students, the teachers, our cities, government, like we need to change this impact.
100%. And I think one tool, even since our last conversation, that has been brought up in some really important conversations, and I think it's so important to say, is this little piece of curiosity. Because I was inside a coaching call recently, and the coach was talking about sometimes when we're dealing with a painful situation with someone. So let's say somebody has hurt us. They've said words that have hurt us. They've done actions toward us that have hurt us. It's a hard place to go all the way from painful, awful feelings of anger. Maybe we feel shame, really low ladder emotions, things that are very difficult. It's very hard to go from there all the way to like, oh my goodness, I can understand you. I want to know you. I want to like hear your story. You know, they're almost so far apart that it's so hard, even as adults, when we have the tools to be able to bridge those kind of gaps. But what sort of stands in the middle of pain and empathy? And if we can sort of insert that element of curiosity in between, we may not be able to go all the way from pain to empathy, but what if we could just say, well, what if what that person said to me or did to me wasn't about me?
Yeah.
What if there's something else going on in their life or in their world or in their story, something that I can't see, something that I don't understand? Maybe if that's true, maybe I can at least give them the benefit of forgiveness and I can sort of move on and move away from that. And maybe by me just offering them that little element of forgiveness, that may slowly but surely actually lead to a place where I could ask that question, hey, what's going on is there something I could do for you that could actually bring us to a place of empathy and true understanding that, they may be a little far apart, but there are some pieces that are right there in the middle that if we can teach our kids those questions and those elements of curiosity, it can help lead them sometimes from a very painful situation to actually coming to places of empathy, which is exactly what we kind of saw with Brandon in that
Yeah.
situation. They were way
Yeah.
over here,
Well,
but yeah, he found a middle piece.
right. And I think again, that's why your mom ambassadors is so important, because
Yes,
it starts so much with us. Because again, when we go
yes,
back to the basics of understanding that kids can't, they're only thinking what they're,
yep,
about self, we have to be showing them how that's done. We have
that's
to
right.
be implementing it and showing them the tools over and over and over again so that
Yes,
they can someday do it. So that when they are
yes,
sitting there in that seat, they can all of a sudden it's going to click and be like, oh, I could turn around and do something different. And,
yes,
it's the same thing. Like I've had situations with, I mean, I have 4 daughters. I've had
hmm,
situations where things have come up and it's the parents don't want to talk. They just want to be like, let's not hang out with that kid. Something's wrong with them. And it's
yep,
like, come on, like we got to sit down. Like it's
yeah,
okay. Like we
yes.
all have stuff.
We all have stuff.
So let's sit down together and show our kids how to have confrontation. We're going to have confrontation
Yep,
and pain
yep,
anyways. So why
yes,
don't we show them how to do it in a healthy way?
yep. And sometimes when we sit down or when we give elements of curiosity or openness or we open our heart up, we may not get that returned, or we may get it returned. We may get that conversation, we may get that opportunity, and it may not turn out great on the other end because what we can't control is someone else's response. I can't
Right.
control the way that person's going to respond to me. Even when I speak life over somebody, I can't necessarily
Yep.
predict what's coming back at me with that. What I do know is there are better chances, even statistically, that when I come at somebody with love and peace and kindness and forgiveness and life speaking words or life speaking actions, there's such a stronger chance that they're going to be able to return something, even neutral, even in a neutral category to that it's not going to combat in a combative way because peace and grace and all of those things actually begin to soften the ground of people's hearts and pain and the things that they're carrying. And those things as adults, we create shields around ourselves
Yeah.
and we let our shame and our pain speak for us. And instead, exactly what you're saying, if we can start to show our children that when we offer places of love and hope and forgiveness and we open ourselves up to really important conversations with people and we get curious with them, we actually ask them, hey, how are you doing? What's going on with you? How could I support you? When we give that to other people, 9 times out of 10 it's going to get returned to us. And when it doesn't, I'm finding too, and I think this is some great things as I keep learning, because I keep just trying to dive in myself so I can give more back to kids. I just saw a teacher who did something recently, and what she brought up was this little piece that, and sometimes when someone's not returning something in kindness to us, it's also okay to understand how to kindly not be friends with people. Because sometimes there's
Absolutely.
people in the world that we're not meant to be friends with. And
Hmm.
there's people that we need to distance ourselves from, and we need to create those boundaries. But in doing so, we don't need to talk poorly behind their back.
Yep.
We don't have to cast judgment upon them. We don't have to tear them down on the way out. We don't have to burn the house down on our way out. Like none of that is needed. We can actually even do that in kindness. Like
Right.
that can even be kind, both to ourselves and to the other person.
Absolutely. It's learning those, which I almost think lately when I've been dealing with my clients, is those internal boundaries of,
Yes.
we are going to be again around people that have different beliefs than us,
Yep.
see things differently, act differently than our morals or integrity and authenticity would show, but we're still going to have to interact with people. And how am
Yep.
I going to keep myself safe? And
Yep.
it's okay. Like, I mean, I've been at jobs, at school, all these things, like Instagram, even, like, you know what I mean? There are people that you wouldn't normally interact with, or that are going to be mean or hurtful and all that stuff. And how are we going to show up authentically to those people and also protect ourselves? And that's okay. Not everybody deserves all of you.
That's right. That's right. These are such important tools. I think I could go back to my childhood, and I wish some of these things would have been more incorporated in the
Mm,
things that were spoken to me, because oftentimes we can almost inadvertently teach our children so much about kindness and love that we forget to incorporate the fact that there's also a such thing as a healthy boundary.
absolutely.
And people are going, not everyone deserves our kindness. Everybody just may not deserve a little piece of us, maybe in friendship, in an intimate or a close way. That's not for everyone. We're not made
Right.
that way. Even as adults, we realize, like, oh, a nice, close, tight circle of people who are my people, that's some of the safest places we can be in life. It doesn't mean that everyone doesn't deserve our kindness. It just
Right.
may mean that there's certain boundaries there where that intimacy should not exist inside those types of friendships. And kids need to feel the freedom to feel that, and to know that that's okay, that that's
Yeah.
okay to walk away from something that's not safe and that's not serving you. And I think that that's so wise too, because it helps our kids. Had this beautiful story of another girl that was bullied. She shared her story, and she's now 3-4 years after graduation. And her bullying story was so heartbreaking, and
Mm,
it was a manipulation. It was manipulation by a group of girls. And they manipulated her to such a degree where she was like not allowed to speak and not allowed to talk. And
mm,
like people knew that when she was with these other girls, like they couldn't speak to her. Her own friends knew, like, if she was with those girls, she wasn't allowed to speak, talk. They treated her almost like she wasn't a person.
mm.
And she had been so manipulated by them. And somewhere in there, there was a false sense of maybe that she was being, she had to do those things because maybe there was some love and acceptance in there somewhere. But if we're not teaching and showing and replicating to our kids that some situations and some people are just not healthy, safe people,
Yeah.
those types of manipulations and bullying can also begin to take place because kids don't understand their own boundaries. So I think both of these conversations are so important. We need
Yeah.
to teach the kindness and teach the words and teach the actions and teach the empathy, but also give the tools and the understanding of safety and boundaries and all of those things.
Right. And being able to teach those things, that's where you're going to learn to be able to trust yourself. And I think in our
Yes.
society, it it can, for me growing up, it can be so difficult. Even thinking about our school systems, you have to raise your hand to go to the bathroom, you have to ask for a
Yes.
drink, you know what I mean? Like, you have to do all these things, and I mean, you can only wear certain things, like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, all of these systems that
Yeah.
are in place to keep diminishing our kids to only listen to other people. And then you wonder why we become adults and you don't know how to listen to your intuition, or that you can't trust yourself. And so it's just this like huge thing of being able to say, like, no, you can trust yourself, like, you deserve to be treated with love and respect. And you don't
Yes.
have to, you can love and respect people for being people, but you don't have to give it. And I know that, or give into it, but
Yes.
you don't have to. I think, being raised religiously too, like, you're taught so much: forgive and forget, forgive and
Yes.
forget, in the generation I was in, and
Yeah, me
that,
too.
yeah, and that really set me up to not trust. I need to give myself constantly, give, 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 but like, I'm depleted, and then I can't trust anything that I'm being told or said.
Yes. And you're not, and you lose your own inner voice. You
Hmm.
lose, and it's that inner voice that speaks to us that oftentimes is screaming right up front, like, not safe, not safe. There should be a boundary there. And sometimes we forget those intuitions. because we're not used to listening to our own voice. And I think we have to give kids their power back. I feel like that's been a huge
Absolutely.
part of what I've seen, I think post-COVID, even in a bigger way, because even more was taken from them during that particular season where they lost the ability, a lot of them, to be able to go to their own schools, visit with their own friends. There were so many of their freedoms that were taken from them. And kids need to understand their own power. They need to be given those elements of control so that they do learn how to listen to their own voice, and that they can make really strong and solid decisions for themselves, and that they can trust their own intuition. And to me, a kid like Brandon is a great example of what it looks like that a child who's in ninth grade can make good and positive decisions like that. And this child has become an incredible leader in his school. I mean, when he stands up, his presence in a room demands instant respect from his peers, because he's walked with kindness, he's walked with authority, but you can tell he's a child who's trusted himself and his own intuition. And that really demands respect. It demands respect from the kids around him because he's respected himself and he's loved himself.
Yeah.
And that's huge. It's
Yeah.
such a big piece.
No, it is. It is. Yeah, that's awesome. Oh, already
I know we
like,
talked about a lot of things, but I know you had some great questions too coming in. I want to dive into some of that.
Oh my gosh, I know, this is so good. I was telling Rebecca, I usually have like an outline and everything, and I like, this is my first one that I haven't really done an outline for, and I'm like, gosh, like it really shows you how things on the fly can be so, it just, what's
good.
needed to be said is needed to be said.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So good.
Yep.
But yes, was telling her I had reached out to some friends just to let them know we were talking about this again and what questions they had for the conversation around bullying. And we really want to be able to give them the tools and resources for this. So again, obviously, I will have in the show notes, like being able to reach out to Rebecca for Speak Life the Musical so we can get into the schools. I know that you said that you guys have an incentive kind of going on. Do you want to share that real quick?
I would love to. So if you didn't get to listen to the last podcast and hear a little more, I won't get into huge detail about it because it was a good podcast. You should go back and listen to that one too.
Yeah.
But if you are a mom, I mean, honestly, parents across the board, we're always speaking to all of our parents, but moms are often the ones who get to have that great opportunity of being involved in the day-to-day with their kids. And because of that, oftentimes I know as moms, we become a big voice, especially inside their schools, how they're dealing with what's going on in the classroom, their teachers, all of those things. And so as we sort of looked into that and leaned into that, we realized that moms do need more support in this. And we want to do that as a company. We want to come alongside moms and make sure that when you see a problem in your child's school that your child's dealing with, or that you see happening inside a classroom, that when you approach your school, you don't just have to approach them with a problem, but you can actually come to them with a solution. And Speak Life and Bullying the Musical, that has been our passion work for the last 20 years, but we're so excited that it has now come to film. It is in digital format along with 5 lesson plans that the school and the classroom can utilize. So once the kids have seen the film, and that can be done in a classroom space, it can be done in a large assembly forum. This is a high energy Broadway level style theater production brought to film in the same style as Hamilton on Disney Plus. I'm sure that the website will be in the show notes if you want to jump in and watch the trailer. It'll give you a really good feel for what the film looks like.
And again, we have that all in the first episode too. So go, like we literally remember, we go through everything, you know what I mean? Yes, so go back.
Yeah, so go back and listen to all of that. And so if this is something that you feel could be a great tool for your school, as moms, I know your time is ridiculously valuable. And although I know out of the goodness of your heart, you would literally do anything for your child, because that's who we are as moms, we do want to value your time. And so we would love to give a gift to you that if you were able to help us to get this program into your school, when your school accepts it, utilizes it, and the program is put into place, they will, schools are given budgets for programs like ours. So typically they come through either government funding that comes to the school, private charter, private schools, they have other sources for funding for these kind of programs. So once they adopt it, we will send you a $250 gift to just say thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the connection and the resource, because the biggest thing with our schools is elements of trust. They trust you. You are the mom. Your child is in that school. They know it matters more to you than to anyone else what the life in that classroom looks like. And so to me, your voice in that school is the voice they're going to trust. Yes, we have lots of years of experience. We have lots of little things behind our name that will give them that credibility once we come to the table. But we know that if you say, I trust this program, this is something I think our kids need, they trust you. And so for that, we would love to extend that gift. So that's going to be running from now through the end of October. October is Bullying and Violence Prevention Month. It is usually the month when schools love to have programs like ours in and utilize it. And also September is actually Suicide Prevention Month. And the film doesn't just address bullying, but it addresses so many other topics that surround bullying, as well as the effects of bullying. And we know that suicide is our greatest risk when we see bullying take place in these young formative stages inside kids' lives, is that we're losing so many teenagers to suicide. In fact, during our season of COVID, we actually lost more teenagers to suicide than we even lost to COVID because of the isolation, because of the things our kids were going through. And so this is a huge topic for schools. Schools are dealing with this in ways. I was just saying when we started the podcast, every conversation I have, I want to burst into tears because of so many of the things our schools are dealing with. So moms, we want to be a resource to you. We want to be a resource to your schools. Please reach out to us. Feel free to DM me. And I can get you all the information and resource you. We have a great Facebook group too. I hope that moms, you'll jump into our Facebook group. It's called MOMBASSADORS, Speak Life and Bullying. Feel free to search us. We'd love to invite you in.
Too.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that statistic too. It's just like, makes me so angry.
I know.
Like I'm just angry that that's not what we're talking about.
Yes.
Like,
this is what we need to be talking about. Mental health.
That's the epidemic.
That's the epidemic.
Yeah. I'm like, that's how mad I am. I'm just like, that's what we need to be talking about. Not that COVID isn't affecting us, but like, oh my gosh. Like,
our kids, they need our support. They crave love and connection. When we eliminate those things, when we put boundaries on things like love and connection, which is what we did, those are more loneliness is a more devastating disease than almost anything else we could talk about, because kids slip into depression and kids slip into so many places because they don't have the tools that we have as adults. They don't have the understanding. And we lost plenty of adults in that season to suicide as well because of what adults were going through. But for kids, what I see, there was a season of time where almost every suicide story I heard, when they would tell me the age of the child, they always said 12 years old. I could not believe that we were losing babies. I mean, 12-year-olds are babies, these little children. And if you think about a 12-year-old's mind, you can only imagine that they can't see past the end of their pain for the next hour, far less believing that tomorrow could be better or the next day could be better. And that's what we learn in life. We begin to realize that although pain comes and it's hard and it's difficult, we need to find the tools to deal with it. We find our way through. But when you're 12 years old, you're still learning that. That is not something that's just innately in us. And so it is so important that we're incorporating programs like this inside the lives of kids at super young ages, because they need to be understanding that there is hope. They need to be feeling empathy and love from their peers, and knowing that they aren't alone. And their peers, the ones that are participating in bullying, need to understand the impact of their actions and words. And like we discussed at the beginning of this podcast, most of that is coming from their own places of pain. But oftentimes kids will not make those changes. They will not be able to make steps toward actionable change until they've understood it here. They must get it in their heart. The brain is actually wired that way. As I've talked to some neuropsychologists, they have said it plain and simple. The brain is wired in a way in which it must interact with empathy. Like, it has to interact with empathy if you're ever going to ignite action and if you're ever going to create real change in the life of a child. So facts are not enough. Kids know that their words matter. Kids know that their words have impact. Kids know that their actions have impact. But like you said, that ego, they're so young, that's all they know. It's survival of the fittest. It's, I need to survive today. Whatever it takes, I need to survive. If we're going to let them look outside of themselves, they have to connect to empathy. And we're not going to do that unless we show them and allow them to feel. And that's what this film and that's what this lesson plan does, is it lets them feel.
Yes.
the impact of their words. So I think it is so important. And moms, we want to do everything we can to enable you with every single tool to help you share this program and to be a support to you, because this is hard stuff. This is really hard stuff. My kids are 22, 15, and 18. And even at those ages, I still see all of the struggle.
Yeah.
So this is something that we need to stay in conversation about, and we need to keep supporting each other inside of.
Yeah. I mean, I see it as an adult. I see it as an
Yep.
adult, and I see it with my kids. And again, my kids are 11 and then 3 9-year-olds. So,
Yes.
and again, all girls. So we're in the thick of
Wow.
it.
Yes. In the absolute thick of it.
Yeah,
So you said
absolutely.
there was a few questions that some of the moms
Yeah.
were asking.
Yes, I did say that. So I did write down those questions.
I
Okay,
know.
so we were talking about, I mean, I'll just throw them out there and
Yeah,
then because I think they can all kind of intertwine as
yeah.
such. So, what are signs that your child is being bullied? Signs your child is being the bully, and then
Mm,
social media and bullying.
wow.
Where I figured I just
Woo!
narrowed it down. Those were the big ones that I kept hearing. And so
Yes.
I was like, all right, let's
These
get
are
to it.
good. These are good questions, really good questions. Um, I'll say before I would even address the first one of what are signs, I think even more proactively than what may come back, because I would hate to ever neglect a sign that could be there, because I think every child is so uniquely different that the signs could show up differently for every child. But what I will say is, you as the mom, just like when you know your child is sick, but you know, like, something's not right. This isn't like the sniffles sick. Like something's not right. Something in your gut and your intuition is telling you, I need to search for more. There's
Hmm.
more going on here. We do that so well as moms with our kids' physical health. I think if we can pay attention as well to things and just any kind of change in their daily activity, in their daily responses, oftentimes kids will pull away to self-protect. So a lot of kids will start to maybe become quieter, maybe not open up, maybe not be willing to talk. A lot of kids may react, and their reactions may show up differently. Some kids, it might be anger. Some kids, I know for my husband, when he went through some things in middle school, and for him, he just like straight up stopped doing his homework. And when his parents would force him to do his homework, he'd actually rip it up on his way to school. So
Mm,
what he was looking for was the attention that
mhm.
not doing that homework was bringing in. Even though it was negative attention, it was still attention, it was still connection. And that, as in his young little mind, he didn't know how to process what was going on. And that was one way to keep getting attention coming at him, even though it was something that was negative. And so I think it's just things that, and that didn't make sense. Like his parents would say, but wait, we did his homework. Like, I don't, like, why would a child rip up their homework? So when things just don't make sense, when the dots aren't connecting anymore, when things are just off or unusual, a slip in grades is probably one of those top things that parents often notice begins to happen. But the retreating, I would say also watch carefully if your child is just kind of swinging to a place where you see that they're only maybe identifying with one person, not, there's not openness, there's not friendship, there's not community, and one person becomes their everything. I've seen that become very risky and sometimes move down the road that can be super, super unhealthy and sometimes lead to a more of a manipulation bullying perspective.
I was
So I
gonna
would say those, yeah, go
Oh,
ahead.
I was gonna say too, just remembering again those core beliefs of the trust, and the self, and then the anger. Like when you were talking
Yes,
about anger, when we remember if we're feeling anger, we're usually feeling powerlessness. So
yes,
that's it to me. When I hear that, it makes sense that he's ripping it up because he's trying to take back control. And
that's
again,
right.
if we're super about self, we're not going to be able to see what maybe what it sounds like his parents were doing. We're trying to show up. And
Yeah,
so again, like there's room for knowing that, like, what he was trying to do, he was trying to
yes,
take it back, he was trying to take the
yep,
control back. And that's why giving these tools are so important. And I was going
yes.
to add with that, like, what are some questions, like, if we're already like that's what we're gaining, right? Is if we're
Yes.
talking about things naturally with our kids, what are some questions that we could ask that are just
Yeah.
natural to talk about that could maybe like pick up something, maybe not for them, but for us?
Yes.
Does that make
Well, I think,
sense?
yes. And one of the best pieces, I remember there was a point in which I sat down with a counselor, and I used to say to her, I used to say, we're just artists. Like, I feel like sometimes we're finding ourselves in situations where, we're unearthing things inside of kids. And I mean, when we used to be in person, we'd perform the show, and afterwards we would be back out with the kids, whether it was in the cafeteria or in the theater. And I mean, I'd sit down with young girls, young boys, and they would erupt into tears and tell me stories that were so incredibly heartbreaking. And remember I said to the counselor, like, I need more tools. Give me more tools so I know what to say to them. And they said, Rebecca, you have the most important tool, because the most important tool is that you just get them talking. And once you get them talking, keep them talking. And she said, it is actually that simple. She said, it's when children are retreating into themselves, or they don't feel it's safe. Like, mom and dad are safe to tell things that are good, positive, and, I know they're not going to overreact. And it's so funny because my 22-year-old said on this past vacation, he goes, we were talking about a GPS on the phones, right? A tracker, which is a very common thing that we put on our kids. If they've got the phone, we've got the tracker on them. Well, that's always a weird moment when you've tracked your child and now they turn 18 and okay, now they're not a minor anymore. So like, what do you do with that? And we just opened up a very interesting conversation. He looked at me and he said, Mom, I would never have a hesitancy for you to track my phone as an adult, because you've never shown a tendency of overreaction that would make me not want you to know if
Right.
something wasn't okay. And I thought, oh my gosh, like, I don't know that I did that intentionally, but thank you, Jesus, that my child feels that he feels that he's not going to get an overreactive response from me, that he feels unsafe to tell me something or for me to know something that maybe he doesn't feel the best about. And I think a lot of times that's where it is with kids and their conversations with us. I would say maybe maybe not as much what is the question you ask, but what are the safe places that you're creating, and what are the opportunities that you're creating for really safe and good conversations to have. I've heard some great parents talk about dating your children, and it's not something I've been through a season of chronic illness, and so things like that didn't really work into our schedules, and it's something I'm beginning to incorporate now as my kids are older and I'm healthier. But I highly recommend it. I think when kids are taken aside, like a date, whether you're taking them for ice cream or you're taking them for a moment that they know it's just me and you, and you're being intentional with me, I almost think at that point, just starting with simple things. How has your day been? How has school been? Think about questions that require real responses beyond okay and good.
Yep. I say that those are not feelings in my house. Okay and
Yes,
good is
okay and
not a
good is
feeling.
not good. Yes, I love that. So I think questions that inspire our kids, to give them options of things, what was your favorite? Things like that that allow them to go a little bit deeper. And sometimes when we start with super surfacey things, as long as we've made them feel safe, special, loved, heard, seen, they're naturally going to begin to open up, and they're going to begin to talk about things that actually truly matter to them. And I mean, most of the things I found out that have happened in negative ways to my kids at school have come out of the most like, I wasn't asking that question.
Yeah. And my job is obviously all in shame. So I just want
Yes,
to encourage my listeners as
yes,
well that if this if this is just your starting point of talking with
yes.
your kids, one, I want you right now to stop that thought and give yourself some self-compassion and grace, because we
Mhm.
all start somewhere.
Oh, yes.
You know what I mean? And then also, like, even if, like, don't think that, like, if you're at the point where you're going on dates or that's your next step, great. But again, just like you said, that small conversation, something that I do with
Yep,
my kids that could be a small point for you too, is I let them all pick one or two things on the car ride home that they can share with me.
I love it.
And also, by the way, just like as a side note, that's also for me. Because then it's like four kids coming at me like with four girls, but I'm like, okay, you get to pick two things to tell me on the car ride home, and then it's reading time. So just
That
to
is so, but
slide
that's
that in
so
there.
good. Because you're also, in doing that, I think you're actually you're helping them to think about what's most important that I want to share too. And maybe now they're not just going to like rattle off the things like, I didn't like lunch today. They might think of the thing that actually, actually really mattered to them about their day. I actually was going to bring up the car rides. I think that probably the most genius time as parents is got to be our car rides.
Yep.
With our kids. And then as your kids grow and they're different seasons, for all of us have different age groups and stuff with children. But you're going to find that you're going to end up alone at points in your pickups and your drop-offs with your kids. And sometimes that may be the only really alone time when you have a lot of children at home at the same time that you may get with your child. And I think car rides can be some of the best times to have those conversations. We were even thinking about down the road where we have a student portal. Eventually, we're hopefully going to make that into an app. But one of the things we'd love to provide for parents is an app with a list of questions for car rides.
So I don't know if you saw, did you see, I did a podcast with someone called Drive-A-Log?
Yes, I think you had mentioned that. Yep.
Yeah. So a plug for him. I did do, if you haven't listened to that podcast either, but he has like note cards that you can purchase for certain age groups to talk with kids. And then he also has an app now too, but I want to see your app come out and your podcast just again to say.
Yes, hopefully both of those things we believe are coming, but yes, please support people who are doing incredible work like this, because as parents, we are busy, we are overwhelmed. And I love what you said about shame and grace, because coming as a chronically ill mom, and I'm not talking a short period, I was chronically ill for 20 years. Yeah. That is the good majority of my kids' entire lives. For my youngest, it is his entire life that I was sick. And for a good part of my youngest life, I mean, I was sick. I was not even up to driving my children to and from school. I missed so many of the important things. And I feel like I have a lot of catching up and making up to do, but I want to just encourage you parents, like, we all have our things. We all have our stuff that we've walked through. Our kids are amazing. And even if we haven't been able to before, or even if we're at a starting point, or if you're in that hard season right now, if right now is the moment where like you can't do those things with your kids, like it's okay. It can look like anything. Yep. Just make it work for you guys. Most of my conversations with my kids happened inside my bed, because that's where I was all the time. They'd curl up next to me. They'd come and sit at the end of my bed. It was the brightest part of my day. They had me completely in those moments.
Right.
And so I could feel shame for the fact that I couldn't do the other things, but mom was always home. Mom was always right there. Mom was like a couple of steps away.
And the thing is that they just want us. That's it at the end of the day. We don't need tons of money or doing activities or do this. Like, honestly, it's showing that kids statistically are doing way too much right now.
Right.
They just want us.
They do. And it's going to be the thing that matters to them. And I've really seen that with my kids. I couldn't overschedule my kids because it meant overscheduling me, and I couldn't do that. And I think had I been a well mom, I probably would have been a massive overscheduler of my children. But I thought for the first part of those years, I thought I was doing my kids a disfavor because I couldn't get them involved in all the things, until I started to realize that, like, hey, actually, our days that were slowest and the most peaceful in our home, they got the best parts of me. They didn't get the stressed out parts of me, the overwhelmed parts of me. They got the best parts of me. And like you said, they just want you. They just want you.
Beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. It's so hard sometimes when we're in the thick of it, and to realize like what those moments did do for us.
Yeah.
When they felt the worst.
Yeah. And remember too, that even when we go through tough stuff that does affect our kids, I have seen it produce extremely empathetic children. Yeah. Like, my children do understand empathy. My children do understand that there's stuff going on behind the scenes, because there always was in their home. There was always something going on that people didn't know about. And they were always dealing with those kinds of pain. And the best teacher that my middle son ever had asked him. He knew something wasn't okay, and he asked him, and he told him about me. And I was at my sickest at the time, and I was on IVs constantly, and it just wasn't a pretty picture for my son at home. And he looked at him and he said, you know what? My mom was homesick too. And I used to give her IVs. And he started sharing his story with my son. And he told him how amazing he was. And he told him how valuable he was. And my son never forgot that teacher's name. Like to this day, he will tell you that was his favorite teacher from one moment in one connection where that teacher said, "Me too." Like, I get it, I understand, and showed that kind of empathy toward him. And so I think it teaches us all that if we see our kids acting out, if we see our kids really going through something, yes, there may be something going on behind the scenes that we don't know. There are times when my kids, I feel like they're acting in such a different way that just doesn't feel like them. I'll just stop. Like I'll start, it's very easy to react to it. And sometimes I'll just stop and say, is something else going on? Like, let's talk. Like, I feel like something's not right. And they may not. I've gotten a lot of, no, mom, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. And a lot of like a push away. But I want to keep opening that door as often as I can to give them that opportunity. And your next question after that was a good one too. It was, how does, I'm trying to remember what it was.
I want to highlight though, this is so good. I want to highlight too, like, again, like that role of how important teachers are too.
Yes.
Like that, because I feel like we really, I feel like there's those moments where, and I don't know if it's for everybody, but I feel like a lot of people that I talk to, there's that one teacher that changed our life.
Yep.
And then there's that one teacher that really hurt us.
It's really true. I mean, at the end of the film, one of the things we talk about is that every single time you open your mouth, you'll do one of two things. You'll speak words of life or you'll speak words of death. We actually don't have a choice. Those are the only two options of what could come from our mouths. And so we have to choose so carefully. And teachers are people too, like their moms, their dads, they're going through stuff, they're feeling stuff. And they have a lot going on as well. And so for them to show up every day, it's a big deal.
Oh my gosh.
It's a hard job. And for them to show up emotionally and mentally and, you know, and the pressures that they have on them from the schools and to produce and all the weight that they have, I get it. And yet at the same time, they have such a beautiful opportunity to be able to speak life into our children in a way that other than parents, almost no one else in our kids' lives are ever going to get those opportunities. And I mean, I have my teacher, Mr. Contis. I will never forget him. He was my teacher that spoke life into me, made me believe bigger and more for myself. He will be in our lives forever. Like we haven't lost touch with him. Like he's just an amazing, amazing man. So you have the opportunity to make an impact on someone's life that can last a lifetime. And it's simple things of just showing up for people, asking them, showing them love, speaking life over them, and helping them believe more for themselves. And as teachers, oh my goodness, you are our heroes. And there are so many amazing things you do for our kids every day. And I would just want to affirm our teachers to say that when you show up, man, you may not see the difference in the moment, but you are making a lifetime of difference for our kids.
Absolutely. And again, for me too, mine was Mr. Penny and then Aaron Lehman, who actually, I mean, I know this will come out later, but tomorrow I'm actually releasing my podcast that I did with him.
So exciting.
It was so good. Okay. We said to talk. I'm like trying to scroll back. Okay.
I know.
I said signs your child is being bullied, signs your child is being the bully, and then social media and bullying. So I know that we've gone a little bit. Are you still, I don't know what your time is. Are you still okay to
I'm okay. I'm okay for another couple minutes. Sure.
Okay, then if we're okay for a couple of minutes, I mean, I want to set up again for us to go in deeper. I feel like we've covered a ton. How about, you know, we know the questions now. Now our audience knows the questions we're going to go over next.
Yes, so and I think let's come back because I think the piece about social media, that's big. That's a big conversation.
That's why I don't want to just like skim I don't want to skim over these things. I want us to be able to get back and talk about it again. So
that sounds great.
Do that. Well, thanks guys for coming to my non-outline podcast today with Rebecca, and hopefully it all sounded well and went well. Thanks for having empathy for me, everyone, through it. And seriously, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for what you're doing. I can't wait for us to talk again. It's just this new friendship that keeps coming. Yes.
Thank you so much. And thank you for your constant support. And I just encourage you all, keep listening because what you have to say is so important. It's so important for all of us. And I love the way that you pour in to us as adults, because I think so many of the tools that you give and you express and show through your incredible knowledge is stuff that I know even as adult, I'm still working through and I'm still learning. And the more that we press in, I just encourage you as parents, the more that we press into our own healings, the more we do the work, the more that our kids are going to follow in those footsteps. And we are going to create incredible, amazing adults who go out and change the world. And that's what we want to do. That's what we're doing every day, showing up for our kids.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you again for coming on, and we'll see everybody next week.
See you then.
Bye. Thanks, friends, for listening in. If you found this helpful, please subscribe, share, and leave a review. If you'd like to be more involved in our community, hop over to Instagram and find me at Abigail Lavisi. Keep showing up. I will too. See you next time.